The spring gala smelled of champagne and desperation. I stood at the edge of the grand ballroom, my fingers clutching a glass of something expensive I couldn't name, watching the glittering crowd move like a school of fish, synchronized, purposeful, belonging. The chandeliers cast fractured light across marble floors, and somewhere a string quartet played something classical that everyone else seemed to recognize. I didn't. I never did. My dress was borrowed, the shoes pinched, and my hair, pale blonde, falling in waves I'd spent an hour perfecting, felt like a costume I was wearing to play a part I'd never quite learned. Evelyn. The voice behind me made my stomach drop. I didn't turn immediately. I took a breath first, steadied myself, reminded my body that it had survived worse than seeing him again. When I finally looked, there he was. Daniel. Tall, handsome in that practiced way that had once made my heart race, his arm wrapped possessively around a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Everything about her screamed expensive, the kind of expensive I'd never be. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said, and his tone suggested I shouldn't be here at all. The woman beside him, Clarissa, I remembered, barely glanced at me. Why would she? I was the girl Daniel had dated for 6 months before realizing I wasn't ambitious enough, wasn't connected enough, wasn't enough. The breakup had been public, humiliating, a spectacle at his firm's holiday party where he'd simply walked away mid-conversation and never looked back. That was 4 months ago. It felt like yesterday. I was invited, I said quietly, hating how small my voice sounded. Daniel's smile was patronizing. By whom? Before I could answer, before I could conjure some dignity from the ruins of my pride, I felt it, a shift in the air, a presence that made every instinct in my body go still. Someone was watching me. I turned my head slightly, scanning the crowd, and that's when I saw him. He stood across the ballroom, partially shadowed by one of the massive marble columns, but even in the dimness, he commanded attention. Tall, taller than anyone else in the room, with dark hair and features sharp enough to cut. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my annual salary, tailored to perfection, and his eyes... God, his eyes were fixed directly on me, not in the casual way people glance at strangers at parties. This was focused, intense, like he was reading something written across my soul that I didn't know was there. My heart stuttered. Evelyn? Daniel's voice pulled me back, irritated now. Are you even listening? I wasn't. I couldn't. Because the man across the room had begun moving toward me, cutting through the crowd with the kind of certainty that made people step aside without thinking. The conversations around him seemed to dim. Even the music felt quieter. My mind raced. I didn't know him. I was certain I'd never seen him before. I would have remembered. But the way he moved, the way people parted for him, suggested he was someone important. An idea formed. Reckless. Stupid. Born from 4 months of humiliation and the desperate need to not feel invisible anymore. When the stranger was close enough, when I could see the slate gray of his eyes and the dangerous curve of his mouth, I made my choice. I stepped forward, closing the distance between us, and looked up at him with what I hoped resembled confidence. "Please kiss me," I whispered, barely audible over the music. "My ex is watching." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. His expression didn't change. He simply stared at me with those impossible eyes, and I felt my courage crumbling, felt the mortification rising like a wave. Then his hand came up, fingers sliding along my jaw with surprising gentleness, tilting my face upward. "Is that what you want?" His voice was low, rough, with an accent I couldn't place. British maybe, but older somehow. Deeper. I couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. So I nodded. The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, something more dangerous, and then he kissed me. It wasn't performative. It wasn't for show. It was consuming. His mouth claimed mine with a confidence that made my knees weak, one hand still cradling my jaw while the other settled at the small of my back, pulling me against him. He tasted like whiskey and something darker, something that made my head spin, and my fingers clutch at his jacket just to keep standing. The world fell away, the music, the crowd, Daniel. All of it dissolved into nothing. When he finally pulled back, I was trembling. His thumb brushed across my lower lip. A gesture so intimate it felt more invasive than the kiss itself. "Better?" he murmured. I couldn't answer. Couldn't think. My brain had short-circuited somewhere between his hand on my face and the way his body had felt pressed against mine. Behind me, I heard Daniel's sharp intake of breath, heard Clarissa's whispered, "Who is that?" The stranger's eyes flicked over my shoulder, and something cold passed through his expression. Not anger exactly. Something more controlled, more dangerous. "Your ex," he said, still looking past me, "has poor taste." Then his gaze returned to mine, and the coldness vanished, replaced by something I couldn't name. Curiosity, maybe. Or assessment. "What's your name?" he asked. "Evelyn." My voice came out hoarse. "Evelyn Clark." He repeated it slowly, like he was tasting each syllable. "Evelyn. And you are?" For a moment he didn't answer. His expression shifted, something amused and resigned at once, and he glanced around the ballroom as if seeing it for the first time. "You really don't know," he said. Not a question. My cheeks burned. Should I? The amusement in his eyes deepened. Most people would say yes. Before I could respond, a man appeared beside us, older, wearing an expensive suit and an expression of barely concealed panic. "Your Majesty," he said urgently. "The council is waiting." The words didn't register at first. They bounced off my consciousness like stones off water. "Your Majesty." The stranger, no, not a stranger, something else entirely, sighed and released me, though his hand lingered at my waist a moment longer than necessary. "Tell them I'll be there shortly," he said, his tone brokering no argument. The man hesitated, glanced at me with something between curiosity and concern, then bowed, and disappeared into the crowd. I stared up at the man who had just kissed me, my mind trying and failing to process what I'd just heard. "Your Majesty?" I repeated, the words foreign in my mouth. His expression softened slightly, and he reached up to tuck a strand of my pale hair behind my ear, an unexpectedly tender gesture that made my breath catch. "Adrian Thorne," he said quietly, "though most people know me by another title." The name clicked into place like a key in a lock, and with it came a flood of understanding that made my blood run cold. Adrian Thorne, the Alpha King, leader of the Lycanthrope Council. The most powerful werewolf in the Northern Territories, maybe in the world. I'd asked him to kiss me to make my ex-boyfriend jealous. Oh, God. I started, but words failed. "What do you say when you've just used royalty as a pawn in your petty revenge scheme?" Adrian watched my panic with what looked like amusement. "Breathe, Evelyn. I'm so sorry," I managed. "I didn't know. I would never have." "Asked me to kiss you?" He raised an eyebrow. "I'm aware. I should go." I stepped back, desperate for escape. But his hand caught mine. "Stay." It wasn't a command, but it wasn't quite a request either. Something in between. "I can't," I whispered. "I don't belong here. I don't belong in this world. I didn't even know." "That we existed?" Adrian finished. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand, a soothing gesture at odds with the intensity in his eyes. "Most humans don't. We prefer it that way." "Most humans," I repeated. But you knew I was human. I could smell it. The words should have frightened me. Instead, they sent an entirely different kind of shiver down my spine. "Then why did you—" I couldn't finish the question. Adrian's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering beneath the surface. "Because you looked like you needed saving. And because—" He paused, his jaw tightening. "Because I've spent the evening surrounded by people who want something from me, and you were the first person in months who looked at me and saw just a man." The honesty in his words hit me like a physical blow. "I still shouldn't have—" "You asked," he interrupted gently. I chose to answer. "There's no debt here, Evelyn." Behind us, I heard Daniel's voice, sharp with disbelief. "Is that Adrian Thorne? The Adrian Thorne?" Clarissa's response was hushed but audible. "Oh my God, Daniel. She's with the Alpha King." The satisfaction that bloomed in my chest was petty and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Adrian must have heard them too. because his smile turned wolfish. An appropriate description, given what I now knew. "Shall we give them something else to talk about?" he murmured. Before I could answer, he laced his fingers through mine and began walking, pulling me gently but inexorably through the crowd. People parted automatically, their conversations dying mid-sentence as they recognized him, as they saw me at his side. I felt their stares like physical touches. Curiosity, confusion, judgment, but Adrian's hand in mine was steady, anchoring, and somehow that made it bearable. He led me to a quieter corner of the ballroom, near tall windows that overlooked manicured gardens bathed in moonlight. The noise of the party faded to a dull murmur. "Better?" he asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Adrian studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "You're trembling." "I just kissed a king," I said weakly, "and apparently discovered that werewolves are real." It's been an eventful evening. A genuine smile crossed his face, the first I'd seen, and it transformed him from dangerously handsome to something approaching beautiful. "Fair enough," he said. Then more seriously, "I should let you go. I have obligations, and you've already been dragged into something you didn't ask for." He was giving me an out, an escape. I should take it. Should thank him politely and disappear before this strange, impossible evening became even more complicated. But when I opened my mouth, different words emerged. "What if I don't want to go?" Adrian's eyes darkened. "Evelyn, I know I don't understand any of this," I said quickly. "I know I'm completely out of my depth. But," I took a breath, "but I've spent 4 months feeling invisible, feeling like I wasn't enough. And tonight, for just a moment, I felt seen." Adrian finished softly. "Yes." He stepped closer, and I could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell something wild and clean. Pine and mountain air. "This world I belong to," he said quietly. "It's not safe for humans. There are rules, hierarchies, dangers you can't imagine." "Then help me imagine them. Why?" It was a fair question. Why was I pushing this? Why wasn't I running? "Because," I said slowly, "I think you felt invisible too, in that crowd. For all your power and titles, you were just as alone as I was." Something cracked in his expression. "A carefully maintained wall coming down. Perceptive," he murmured. "Is it true?" Adrian's hand came up again, fingers brushing my cheek with unbearable gentleness. "Yes." The admission hung between us, vulnerable and raw. "Your Majesty." The same man from before had reappeared, his expression more insistent now. "The council really cannot wait any longer." Adrian's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Then he looked back at me, and there was something almost desperate in his eyes. "Will you still be here?" he asked. "When I'm finished?" I should say no. Should use this interruption to escape back to my normal, safe, uncomplicated life. Instead, I smiled. "Yes." Relief flooded his features. "Wait for me." Then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd with the efficiency of someone who'd spent a lifetime navigating political obligations. I stood alone by the windows, my heart racing, my mind spinning, trying to reconcile everything that had just happened. I'd come to this gala to prove to myself I could face Daniel without breaking. Instead, I'd stumbled into something far stranger and infinitely more dangerous, and as I watched Adrian's broad shoulders disappear through a doorway, flanked by men who moved with predatory grace, I realized I was standing at a crossroads. Behind me lay safety, normalcy, the life I knew. Ahead lay unknown territory, danger, and a man whose kiss had made me feel more alive than anything in my forgettable existence. The smart choice was obvious, but when had I ever been smart about matters of the heart? I waited. The ballroom had thinned considerably in the hour since Adrian disappeared. The quartet had been replaced by a pianist playing something melancholic, and the remaining guests clustered in small groups, their voices low and speculative. I caught fragments of conversation as people passed, whispers about the Alpha King's unexpected appearance, about the blonde nobody he'd kissed in front of everyone. Nobody. The word didn't sting the way it might have this morning. Tonight, it felt almost like a shield. I'd moved to the garden terrace, needing air, needing space to think. The night was cool against my skin, carrying the scent of jasmine and something wilder, the forest that pressed close to the estate's boundaries. In the distance, I could see the dark line of trees swaying in the wind, and I wondered what moved through those shadows. What hunted there? "You're still here." I spun around. Adrian stood in the terrace doorway, his jacket gone, his white shirt open at the collar. He looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that went bone deep. But his eyes found mine with that same intensity that had stopped my breath earlier. "I said I would be," I replied, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. He crossed to where I stood by the stone balustrade, and for a moment, we simply looked at each other. Up close, I could see new details. The faint scar along his jaw, the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples, the way his shoulders carried tension like a physical weight. "How was your meeting?" I asked. Adrian's mouth twisted. "Exactly as tedious and infuriating as I expected. The council believes I should choose a mate from one of the established bloodlines. They have suggestions." His tone made clear what he thought of those suggestions. "A mate," I repeated, the word foreign on my tongue. "Not a wife?" "For my kind, they're the same thing. More than the same thing, actually." He leaned against the balustrade beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his arm. "A mate is fated, chosen by forces older than memory. When you find yours, you know. Soul recognizes soul." Something in his voice made my pulse quicken. "Have you found yours?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the distant forest. "That's the question the council keeps asking. The answer they want to hear is yes, preferably someone from the Thornwood line or the Grayson family, someone appropriate. But that's not your answer. No." He turned to face me fully, and the moonlight caught in his eyes, making them almost luminous. "My answer is much more complicated. I should have been frightened, should have recognized the dangerous territory we were entering. Instead, I felt that same reckless courage that had made me ask a stranger to kiss me. "Tell me," I said softly. Adrian studied me for several heartbeats. Then he reached out and took my hand, his fingers threading through mine with the same careful certainty from before. "Do you believe in fate, Evelyn?" "I don't know. I never thought about it much. I didn't either. Not really. Fate was something the elders spoke of, something theoretical." His thumb traced patterns on my palm. "Until tonight. Until I looked across a ballroom and saw a woman with blonde hair who smelled like lavender, and fear and desperate courage. And something in my chest recognized her, my breath caught. Adrian." "I know," he said quickly. "I know how this sounds. You're human. We met 2 hours ago under absurd circumstances. Every rational part of me says this is impossible. But..." His grip on my hand tightened. "But when I kissed you, it felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. And when that bureaucrat interrupted us, every instinct I have screamed at me to refuse, to stay with you, to never let you out of my sight. The words should have terrified me. They were possessive, intense, the kind of thing that would have sent me running from any normal man. But there was nothing normal about Adrian Thorne. I felt it too," I whispered. "The kiss. It wasn't what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Something performative. Something to bruise Daniel's ego and give me a moment of petty satisfaction." I laughed shakily, not to feel like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. Adrian's free hand came up to cup my face, his touch impossibly gentle for someone who radiated such power. "I can't promise you safety if you stay in my world. I can't even promise you understanding. There's so much you don't know, so many dangers. Then teach me." "Evelyn, I've spent my entire life playing it safe," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "I dated Daniel because he seemed stable and appropriate. I worked at a job I hated because it was practical. I never took risks, never did anything unexpected, and where did it get me? Standing alone at parties, feeling like I barely existed. My voice cracked, and I hated the vulnerability in it, but I couldn't stop. Tonight, you made me feel real, visible. And maybe that's just chemicals or coincidence or some weird werewolf magic I don't understand yet, but I don't want to walk away from it. I don't want to go back to being invisible." Adrian's expression shifted through several emotions: concern, desire, resignation, hope. Finally, he leaned forward and pressed his forehead to mine, a gesture so intimate it made my eyes burn. "You were never invisible," he murmured. "The world was just too blind to see you properly." Then he kissed me again, and this time it was different, slower, deeper, like he was memorizing the taste of me. Learning every curve and response, my hands found his hair, threading through the dark strands, and his arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me flush against him. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his chin on top of my head. "This is insane," he said, completely. "The council will object. Your safety will be at constant risk. There are protocols, politics, ancient grudges between families. Are you trying to talk me out of this or yourself?" I felt him smile against my hair. "Both, probably. I'm failing spectacularly." A thought occurred to me, cold and sobering. What about Daniel? He saw us. If he tells people, he won't. Adrian's voice carried absolute certainty. He may not know what I am, but he knows enough to recognize power when he sees it. Men like him don't risk making enemies of people who could destroy them with a word. The casual mention of destruction should have frightened me. Instead, it sent a different kind of shiver down my spine. "Will I see you again?" I asked. "After tonight?" Adrian pulled back enough to look at me, and there was something fierce in his expression. "Yes, if you'll allow it." "Where? How? I don't exactly move in royal werewolf circles." "I'll find you." His fingers traced the line of my jaw. "May I have your number? Your address?" I rattled them off, feeling surreal about giving my contact information to a king. Adrian pulled out his phone, expensive, sleek, and entered the details with surprising speed for someone who seemed so old-world. "Tomorrow," he said. "I'll call you tomorrow. We'll figure this out properly. No more rushed conversations at galas." "Okay." "Okay," he echoed, smiling slightly. Then his expression sobered. "Evelyn, I need you to understand something. My world, it operates by different rules than yours. There will be people who resent you simply for being human, who see you as a weakness or a liability. Because you're the Alpha King and I'm nobody? Because you're mine," Adrian corrected quietly, "and that makes you the most valuable target in my entire kingdom." The possessiveness in his tone should have raised red flags, should have reminded me of Daniel's controlling tendencies, his need to own rather than partner. But this felt different. When Daniel said mine, it had been about ego, about possession. When Adrian said it, I heard protection, promise, a claim that went both ways. "I can handle it," I said, with more confidence than I felt. "I know you can." His thumb brushed my lower lip. "You asked a stranger to kiss you in front of a ballroom full of people. That takes a particular kind of courage, or a particular kind of stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing." A commotion from inside the ballroom made us both turn. Raised voices, someone shouting. Adrian's entire body went tense, his hand dropping to my waist in an unmistakably protective gesture. "Stay here," he said. "What's happening?" "I don't know. But promise me you'll stay on this terrace until I come back." The command in his voice was absolute, and I found myself nodding before I could think better of it. Adrian pressed a quick, fierce kiss to my forehead, and then he was gone, moving with that supernatural speed I was beginning to recognize. I stood alone on the terrace, my heart hammering, listening to the chaos building inside. More shouts, something breaking, and underneath it all, a sound that made my skin prickle, a low, threatening growl that couldn't possibly be human. Minutes passed. The noise died down but didn't disappear entirely. I paced the length of the terrace, debating whether to disobey Adrian's instruction and investigate, when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting Adrian. Instead, I found myself facing a woman I'd never seen before. She was beautiful in a severe way. Dark hair pulled back sharply, features that looked carved from ice, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my car, but it was her eyes that made me step back instinctively. They weren't quite human, too bright, too focused. "So," she said, her voice cultured and cold, "you're the human." I straightened my spine, refusing to show fear. "And you are?" "Elena Grayson," of the Grayson family. She said it like I should recognize the name, and from Adrian's earlier mention, I did. One of the established bloodlines the council wanted him to choose from. "Nice to meet you," I said, though it was clearly a lie. Elena's smile was sharp. "Is it? I wonder. Tell me, Miss Clark. Did Adrian explain to you what it means that he's unmated? What responsibility he carries to his people?" He mentioned the council has opinions. The council has more than opinions. They have expectations. For 300 years, the Thorn line has allied with either the Grayson or Thornwood families. It maintains balance, prevents civil war, keeps the bloodline strong. 300 years. The casual mention of such a timeline made my head spin. "And you're here to tell me I'm disrupting that balance," I said. "I'm here to tell you that you're a momentary fascination, a curiosity." Elena stepped closer, and I could smell something wild on her. Different from Adrian's pine and mountain scent. Something darker. Adrian has responsibilities that span decades, centuries. What can you possibly offer him that's worth abandoning those duties? The question hit harder than I wanted to admit. What could I offer? I was ordinary. Human. Mortal. In a world of immortal beings with ancient bloodlines and supernatural power, I was nothing. But then I remembered the look in Adrian's eyes when he'd called me his. The way he'd kissed me like I was precious. Like I mattered. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But that's between Adrian and me, not you." Elena's expression hardened. "You have no idea what you're involving yourself in. The politics alone could get you removed. And there are those in our world who would see harming you as a legitimate way to influence the Alpha King. Is that a threat? It's a warning. From someone who actually cares about the stability of our people." She looked me up and down dismissively. "Go home, Miss Clark, before you get hurt in ways you can't even imagine." Before I could respond, Adrian's voice cut through the night like a blade. "Elena." We both turned. He stood in the terrace doorway, and there was something in his posture, a coiled violence, that made even Elena step back. "Your Majesty," she said, inclining her head. "I was just introducing myself to your guest, were you?" It wasn't a question. Adrian crossed to my side in 3 long strides, his hand finding the small of my back. "And what did this introduction entail?" "Simply making sure Miss Clark understands the reality of your world. By threatening her, by educating her." Elena's smile was thin. "Surely you don't expect her to navigate our society blind. That would be cruel." The tension between them was palpable, crackling in the air like electricity before a storm. "Evelyn," Adrian said quietly, not looking away from Elena, "would you like to press charges of intimidation against a member of my council?" The question shocked me. "What?" "No, because you have that right. As someone under my protection, any threat against you is considered treason." Elena's composure cracked slightly. "Adrian, don't be ridiculous. You simply decided that my choices are yours to police." His voice could have frozen steel. "You decided that this woman, who I have claimed in front of witnesses, is someone you can bully without consequence." "Claimed?" Elena's eyes widened. "You can't be serious. She's human." "I'm aware. The council will never accept the council," Adrian interrupted with deadly calm. "Serves at my pleasure. Not the other way around. And if they've forgotten that, perhaps it's time for a reminder." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Elena spoke, her voice tight. "This isn't over." "No," Adrian agreed. "It's barely begun. Now leave, before I decide that your insult to my mate deserves a more formal response." "Mate." He'd said it out loud, made it official. Elena's face went white with fury, but she bowed stiffly and disappeared back into the ballroom. I stood frozen, my mind trying to process everything that had just happened. Adrian turned to me, and the violence drained from his expression, replaced by concern. "Are you all right? Did she hurt you?" "No. Just scared me a little, and confused me a lot." I looked up at him. "Did you just call me your mate, in front of a council member?" "Yes." "Adrian." I know what I'm doing, Evelyn. Do you? Because it seems like you just started a war. His hand came up to cradle my face. If there's going to be a war, it was inevitable. I've spent 2 years refusing every appropriate match they've thrown at me. They were already frustrated. And now you've chosen the most inappropriate match possible. Now I've chosen the woman fate gave me. He smiled slightly. There's a difference. My head spun. This was too much. Too fast. This morning I'd been worried about facing my ex at a party. Now I was apparently mated to a werewolf king and had made an enemy of someone named Elena Grayson. I need to go home, I said suddenly. I need to think, to process. This is all overwhelming. Adrian finished gently. I know. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Just give me tonight to wrap my head around everything. Something flickered in his eyes. Fear, maybe, that I was running. But he nodded. Of course. I'll have my driver take you home. I drove myself. Then I'll follow you. Make sure you get there safely. It should have been overbearing. Instead, it felt comforting. Okay, I whispered. Adrian walked me to my car, a modest sedan that looked absurd parked among the luxury vehicles, and waited while I settled into the driver's seat. Before I could close the door, he leaned down. Tomorrow, he said. I'll call tomorrow. And Evelyn? Yes? Thank you. For what? His smile was soft, genuine, devastating. For asking me to kiss you. For not running when any sensible person would have. I reached up and touched his face, feeling the scratch of stubble, the warmth of his skin. I've never been particularly sensible. Good, Adrian murmured, and kissed me one more time. Gentle, promising, full of unspoken things we'd have to figure out. Then he stepped back, and I drove away, watching in my rearview mirror as he stood in the circle of light from the estate, watching me go. I made it 3 blocks before I had to pull over, my hands shaking too hard to drive safely. What had I done? What had I started? And why, despite everything, did I feel more alive than I had in years? I didn't sleep. My apartment felt simultaneously too small and too empty when I finally stumbled through the door at 2 a.m. I kicked off the borrowed shoes, peeled away the dress, and stood in my tiny bathroom staring at my reflection like I might find answers written on my skin. I looked the same. Pale blonde hair mussed from Adrian's fingers, lips slightly swollen from his kisses, eyes too bright. But I felt fundamentally altered, like some essential part of me had been rewritten in a language I didn't yet understand. Werewolves were real. I'd kissed their king. He'd called me his mate. The words kept circling my mind like birds looking for a place to land. Every time I thought I'd grasped the reality of it, it slipped away again, too strange to hold. I made tea I didn't drink, opened my laptop to search for information about Adrian Thorne, then closed it again, afraid of what I'd find. Sat on my couch, watching the sky lighten from black to gray to the pale gold of dawn. When my phone rang at 8 o'clock, I jumped so hard I nearly dropped it. The number was unknown, but I knew who it would be before I answered. Hello? Good morning? Adrian's voice was rough with exhaustion that mirrored my own. Did you sleep? No. You? No. A pause. I wanted to call sooner. Every hour since you left has felt like a week. Despite everything, the fear, the confusion, the sheer impossibility of the situation, I smiled. I know the feeling. Are you working today? I worked at a small publishing house, reading manuscripts and writing rejection letters. It was Monday. I should absolutely be going to work. I'm calling in sick, I heard myself say. Good. Relief colored his tone. Can I see you? I know I promised you time to think, but... Yes. The word came out before I could second guess it. Whatever thinking I needed to do, I realized, wouldn't happen in isolation. I needed to see him again, needed to confirm that last night had been real. I'll send a car, Adrian said. 1 hour? I can drive myself. Evelyn. His voice gentled. After last night, after Elena's warning, I need to know you're protected, please. Let me do this. The concern in his voice melted my resistance. Okay. But Adrian, where am I going? Somewhere we can talk properly. Somewhere safe. He gave me an address north of the city, in the hills where old money built estates behind gates and walls. I should have been nervous. Should have questioned the wisdom of going to a secluded location with a man I barely knew, king or not. Instead, I showered, dressed in jeans and a soft sweater, and waited by my window until a sleek black car pulled up exactly 1 hour later. The driver was a woman, middle-aged, professional, with kind eyes and an air of competence. She introduced herself as Sarah and made small talk about the weather during the drive, never once mentioning werewolves or kings or the fact that I was clearly in over my head. The estate, when we arrived, took my breath away. It sprawled across several acres of manicured grounds, all stone and glass and architectural elegance. Not ostentatious, exactly, but undeniably powerful. The kind of place that whispered old money and older secrets. Adrian met me at the front door. He'd changed from last night's formal wear into jeans and a dark shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The casualness should have made him less intimidating. Somehow, it did the opposite. He looked more real this way, more dangerous, like seeing a wolf out of its cage. "You came," he said, and there was such relief in his voice that my heart squeezed. I said I would. People don't always do what they say. I stepped closer, close enough to smell that pine and mountain scent that had haunted me all night. I'm not most people. Adrian's smile was slow, genuine. No, you're really not. He led me inside, through rooms filled with art and antiques, to a library that could have swallowed my entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked gardens that seemed to go on forever, and a fire crackled in a fireplace large enough to stand in. "This is where you live?" I asked, turning slowly to take it all in. "One of several properties. This one is most secure, most private." He moved to a sidebar and poured 2 glasses of water, handing me one. "I thought we should talk somewhere we won't be interrupted." I accepted the glass, our fingers brushing. The contact sent that same electric jolt through me. Recognition, connection, something beyond explanation. "I have questions," I said. "I imagine you have hundreds." "Let's start with the basics." I settled into one of the leather chairs near the fire, and Adrian took the one opposite. "How old are you?" 243. The number hung in the air between us. 243 years. He'd been alive when my country was still young, had seen centuries pass. "You don't look it," I managed. A hint of amusement touched his expression. "We age differently, slowly. I'll look roughly like this for another century, probably. And then? Eventually, we all fade. Even my kind aren't truly immortal." I sipped my water, trying to wrap my mind around timescales that made my 26 years feel like a blink. "The mate thing. Explain that to me." Adrian leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his gaze intense. "In my world, there's a concept older than recorded history. The idea that souls are created in pairs, split and scattered, destined to find each other. When they do, the recognition is instant, absolute, like soulmates. Exactly like that. Though the bond goes deeper than human concepts usually account for. When wolves mate, we can sense each other's emotions, sometimes thoughts. The connection is profound." My hand trembled slightly. "And you think I'm your mate?" "I know you are." His voice carried utter certainty. "The moment I saw you, something in me knew. Every instinct, every sense confirmed it." "But I'm human." "Yes." "Has that happened before? A werewolf and a human?" Adrian nodded slowly. "It's rare, but not unheard of. The bond doesn't discriminate by species. It simply finds the other half of your soul, wherever they are." I thought of Elena's cold warning, her casual mention of 300 years of tradition. "Your council doesn't approve. The council serves the kingdom's interests, or what they perceive as the kingdom's interests." Adrian's jaw tightened. "They believe stability comes from maintaining bloodlines, from strategic alliances between families. They're not wrong, exactly. Those alliances have kept peace for generations. But I've spent 200 years watching wolves mate for politics instead of love. I've seen the emptiness it creates, the slow death of spirit. I won't do that. His eyes met mine. I can't. Not when I've found you. The conviction in his voice made my chest tight. What if they're right, though? What if choosing me destabilizes everything? Then we'll rebuild. Create something better. Adrian stood and crossed to where I sat, kneeling so we were eye level. Evelyn, I need you to understand something. Being my mate. It's not just romance or attraction. It's a fundamental bond that affects everything. Your safety becomes my priority above all else. Your happiness, your well-being, they're woven into my very existence now. That sounds intense. It is. Which is why I need to know, are you certain you want this? Because once we complete the mate bond, there's no going back. My heart hammered. Complete it? We haven't. The recognition has happened. The connection is there, but the bond isn't sealed until we... He paused, something heated entering his gaze. Until we're intimate. Until I mark you as mine in a way that every wolf will recognize. Heat flooded my cheeks. Oh. I'm not asking for that now, Adrian said quickly. I'm just explaining the reality. You deserve to know what you're choosing. I studied his face, the sharp features, the silver at his temples, the eyes that looked at me like I was something precious and rare. 24 hours ago, I'd been invisible. Now I was someone's fated mate, standing at the edge of a world I didn't understand. The smart choice was obvious. Thank him politely, walk away, return to my safe, ordinary life. But I'd never felt more alive than I did in his presence. I want to try, I said softly. I don't know if I believe in fate or destiny, but I know that when you kissed me, something changed, and I want to find out what that means. Relief and joy flooded Adrian's expression. He took my hands, bringing them to his lips. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm probably going to be terrible at this. I don't know anything about your world, your politics. Then I'll teach you. He smiled. Starting now, if you'd like. Over the next several hours, Adrian gave me a crash course in werewolf society. He explained the pack structures, the territorial divisions, the complex web of alliances and feuds that had shaped their world for millennia. He told me about the council, 12 representatives from the major families who advised the Alpha King on matters of law and policy. Elena Grayson sits on the council, he explained. Her family controls the Eastern Territories. They're powerful, influential, and they've been angling for a mating alliance with my line for decades, so she has personal reasons to want me gone. Several. Yes, I absorbed this, trying not to feel overwhelmed. What about the others? The council members? Some will be curious, some hostile. A few might be open-minded. Adrian poured us both coffee from a service that had appeared at some point. But they'll all test you, Evelyn. They need to see if you're strong enough to stand beside an Alpha King. And if I'm not. His expression hardened. Then they'll learn that strength comes in many forms, and that their approval, while valued, is not required for me to choose my own mate. We talked until afternoon sun slanted through the windows. Adrian answered every question I threw at him. About his childhood in a world utterly different from my own. About the responsibilities of leadership. About the very real dangers that existed in shadows most humans never saw. There are other supernatural beings, he explained at one point. Vampires, witches, fae. We mostly maintain separate territories, separate societies, but there are occasional conflicts. Conflicts, I repeated. You mean wars? Sometimes, though we try to avoid them. War between supernatural factions tends to be catastrophic. The scope of it all made my head spin. I'd been living in a world layered with secrets, walking past beings I'd never recognized as anything other than human. How do you hide? I asked. All of you? How has humanity never noticed? Carefully. We've had centuries to perfect it. Adrian smiled slightly, and honestly, most humans don't want to see us. They've convinced themselves that monsters are fairy tales. It makes them feel safer, but they're not fairy tales. No. His hand found mine across the table where we'd been sitting. Though monster is a subjective term, I've known humans more monstrous than any creature of the night. I thought of Daniel, of his casual cruelty, his need to diminish me. Fair point. A phone buzzed. Adrian's. He glanced at it and sighed. "I'm sorry. I have to take this." "Of course." He stepped away, and I took the opportunity to stand and stretch, walking to the windows. The gardens were beautiful, carefully wild, like nature guided rather than controlled. In the distance, I could see the forest beginning, dark and dense. I was so absorbed in the view that I didn't notice Adrian return until he spoke. That was Marcus, my second. His voice was tight. "There's been an incident. A rogue wolf attacked humans in the city last night. 3 people in the hospital." My blood chilled. "Will they survive?" "Yes, but they're asking questions. The police are investigating." Adrian ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "This is exactly the kind of exposure we try to avoid. What will you do?" "Handle it. Find the rogue. Determine why they broke our most fundamental law." He looked at me, conflict clear in his expression. "I'm sorry. I have to go. This can't wait." "I understand. Sarah will drive you home. And Evelyn?" He crossed to me, cupping my face in both hands. "I'm assigning you protection. Discreet, but constant. After Elena's warning, after what happened last night, I won't risk your safety." I wanted to protest, to insist I didn't need guards. But the fear in his eyes stopped me. "Okay," I said instead. Adrian kissed me, deep, thorough, like he was memorizing the taste of me. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. "This thing between us, it's going to complicate everything," he murmured. "I know. Are you scared?" I thought about it honestly. Terrified, but also excited. Is that strange? No. His smile was soft. "It's perfect." He walked me to the car, his hand never leaving the small of my back. Sarah was waiting, professional as ever. And as I slid into the back seat, Adrian leaned through the window. "Tomorrow?" he asked. "Tomorrow," I confirmed. I watched him in the side mirror as we pulled away, tall, powerful, troubled, standing in front of his impossible house with the weight of his impossible world on his shoulders. And I thought, I'm falling in love with a werewolf king. The realization should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like the most honest thing I'd acknowledged in years. Sarah dropped me at my apartment as evening settled over the city. I thanked her and headed inside, my mind still spinning with everything I'd learned. I was halfway up the stairs when I felt it, that prickling awareness of being watched. I turned slowly. A man stood in the shadows of the stairwell. Older, weathered, with eyes that caught the dim light strangely. "Evelyn Clark," he said. Not a question. My heart hammered. "Who are you?" Someone with a message. He stepped forward, and I saw the council insignia on his jacket, the same symbol I'd noticed on some of Adrian's papers. "The council requests your presence, tomorrow, noon. They wish to meet the Alpha King's chosen mate, and if I refuse?" His smile was thin. "You won't. Not if you care about him." Then he was gone, disappearing down the stairs with unnatural silence. I stood frozen, my hands shaking, understanding with perfect clarity what Elena had meant. The war had already begun, and I was standing right in the middle of it. I called Adrian immediately. He answered on the first ring, and I could hear tension in his voice before I even spoke. "Evelyn? What's wrong?" "Someone was waiting for me, at my apartment. He said the council wants to meet me, tomorrow at noon." Silence. Then, "Describe him." I did, down to the insignia on his jacket, the strange quality of his eyes. Adrian cursed softly, the first time I'd heard him lose his composure. "Thomas Redwood. He's Elena's cousin, serves as the council's messenger." His voice dropped to something dangerous. "He had no right to approach you directly, no right to issue summons without going through me. Adrian, I'm coming to you. Right now." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. Don't leave your apartment. Lock the doors. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up before I could argue. I did as he asked, checking locks, pulling curtains, feeling ridiculous and terrified in equal measure. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "Guardian assigned. You're safe. Marcus." I looked out the window and spotted him immediately. A man leaning against a car across the street, appearing casual, but with a watchfulness that suggested anything but. Adrian's second, I assumed. My protection. The thought should have been comforting. Instead, it hammered home how drastically my life had shifted. 24 hours ago, I didn't need guards. Now I couldn't walk up my own stairs without supernatural messengers lurking in shadows. Adrian arrived in 15 minutes, not 20. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, heavier than human, faster, and opened the door before he could knock. He looked furious. His eyes had gone slightly amber, and there was something in his posture that reminded me viscerally that he wasn't human. That beneath the expensive clothes and careful control lived something wild and powerful. "Are you all right?" He was inside in an instant, hands on my shoulders, checking me over like he expected to find injuries. "I'm fine." He just delivered a message and left. "He shouldn't have been able to get near you." Adrian's jaw clenched. "Marcus was supposed to be in position by 4. He's here now. I saw him outside." Some of the tension left Adrian's shoulders. He pulled me against him, and I felt him breathe deeply, scenting me in a way that should have been strange but somehow wasn't. "I'm sorry," he said into my hair. "This is my fault. I should have anticipated they'd move this quickly." "What do they want?" Adrian pulled back enough to look at me, his hands still bracketing my face. "To intimidate you. To assess whether you're a weakness they can exploit or a threat they need to eliminate." The bluntness of it stole my breath. "Eliminate. I won't let that happen." His voice carried absolute conviction. "But I need you to understand what you're walking into tomorrow. The council chamber isn't a friendly place. They'll question you, test you, try to find ways to break you. Should I refuse to go? No. That would be seen as cowardice or worse. An indication that I'm keeping you isolated because I know you can't withstand scrutiny." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "But I'll be there. Every moment. They can question you, but they cannot harm you, not without declaring open challenge to me." I tried to imagine it, standing before a council of ancient, powerful beings who saw me as an inconvenient obstacle. What should I expect? Adrian guided me to my small couch and sat, pulling me down beside him. "Elena will lead the questioning. She's senior council member for her territory. She'll frame her concerns as legitimate worries about tradition and stability. But really, she's just angry you didn't choose her." A flicker of amusement crossed his features. "Essentially, yes, though her family's concerns are genuine from their perspective. Mixing bloodlines with humans weakens certain genetic traits we value." "Like what?" "Strength, speed, the ability to shift forms." He hesitated. "Our children would be half human, powerful still, but different." Children. The word hung between us, enormous and impossible. I hadn't thought that far ahead, hadn't let myself imagine a future measured in centuries, or offspring who'd inherit their father's supernatural nature. "I'm not pregnant," I said quickly, irrationally. Adrian's expression softened. "I know. The mate bond doesn't work that way, but they'll ask about it tomorrow. About whether you understand the implications of bearing hybrid children." My cheeks burned. This is insane. We've known each other for 2 days. In human terms, yes. For my kind, the mate bond transcends time. When you know, you know. His hand found mine, fingers threading together with that now familiar rightness. "But I understand this is overwhelming. If you need more time, I don't want more time." The words surprised me even as I spoke them. I want to understand, to be prepared. Help me know what to say tomorrow." Pride flickered in Adrian's eyes. "All right. Let's prepare you." We spent the next 3 hours going over potential questions, appropriate responses, the delicate politics of council interactions. Adrian explained the hierarchy, who held real power versus ceremonial positions, which families were allies versus rivals, how to read the subtle cues of dominance and submission that governed their world. "Don't lower your eyes," he instructed. "In our culture, that's submission. You're my mate, you stand equal to me in rank, even if you don't yet understand what that means." "Equal to a king, equal to me," he corrected. "The position is secondary. What matters is the bond." I practiced answering questions. About my background, my intentions, my understanding of what being Adrian's mate entailed. Some answers came easily, others felt inadequate. human responses to inhuman concerns. They'll ask why you, Adrian said gently. Why the Alpha King's mate is a human with no particular bloodline or power. And what do I say? The truth. That fate doesn't choose based on resumes or family trees, that the bond recognized what it recognized. They won't accept that. They don't have to. His voice carried steel beneath the gentleness. They only have to accept that I've made my choice and it's not negotiable. By the time we finished, it was past midnight. Adrian showed no signs of leaving, and I didn't ask him to. Instead, I made tea. We didn't drink and sat beside him on the couch, our shoulders touching, drawing comfort from the contact. Tell me about her, I said quietly. Elena. What was between you? Adrian sighed. Nothing, really. Her family hoped for an alliance. She made her interest clear several times. I declined politely. Why? She's beautiful, powerful, from an appropriate bloodline, because she's not you. He turned to face me fully. Evelyn, I've lived 2 centuries. I've met countless women, human and wolf alike, who would have made acceptable mates by council standards. Some I even cared for, in my way. But there was always something missing, a hollowness at the center of it. His hand cupped my cheek. Then I saw you across a ballroom, looking terrified and brave and so beautifully alive, and that hollowness filled, like finding something I didn't know I'd lost. Tears pricked my eyes. I'm not special. I'm just... You asked a stranger to kiss you because your ex was watching. Do you know how rare that kind of courage is? That willingness to risk humiliation for a moment of dignity? Adrian's smile was soft. You're extraordinary, Evelyn. The fact that you don't see it makes you more so. I kissed him then, unable to help myself. It started gentle but deepened quickly, his hands sliding into my hair, my fingers clutching his shirt. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian pressed his forehead to mine. I should go, he said, voice rough, before I forget myself. Stay. The word escaped before I could think. Not for... I just don't want to be alone tonight. Something vulnerable flickered in his expression. Are you sure? Yes. He stayed. We lay on my bed fully clothed, his arms around me, my head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. It should have been awkward, this intimacy with someone still largely a stranger. Instead, it felt inevitable. Right. Tell me a story, I murmured. Something from your long life. Adrian was quiet for a moment, his hand stroking my hair. Then he began to speak. He told me about growing up in a world where electricity was still new magic, where territories were defended with tooth and claw rather than lawyers and paperwork. He described his parents, his father, the previous Alpha King, stern and traditional, his mother, a warrior in her own right, who taught him that true strength included compassion. She died defending our borders, Adrian said softly. 150 years ago, a vampire incursion that turned into a massacre. She held the line long enough for reinforcements to arrive, but I'm sorry. She would have liked you, I think. She always said the most dangerous opponents were the ones who fought with their hearts as much as their claws. I tilted my head to look up at him. And your father? Stepped down 20 years after her death. Said he couldn't rule without her beside him. Adrian's expression was distant. He lives quietly now, in the Northern Territories. We speak occasionally, but he's retreated from the world. The mate bond, when broken by death, leaves a wound that never fully heals. The implications settled over me like snow. And if something happened to me, don't. His arms tightened. Don't finish that thought. But the reality hung between us anyway. I was human, fragile, mortal. In 70 years, maybe 80 if I was lucky, I'd be gone, and Adrian would still be young, facing centuries alone. Is that why the council opposes us? I asked. Because they know I'll die and leave you broken? Partly. Though they're more concerned about the decades you're alive than what happens after. Adrian's hand found mine, threading our fingers together. But Evelyn, even knowing the end, knowing I'll have to watch you age while I don't, that I'll eventually lose you, I can't regret this. Won't regret it. Whatever time we have is worth the cost. I wanted to believe him. wanted to trust that our brief human length forever would be enough. But I was also terrified of what I was asking him to sacrifice. We fell asleep like that, tangled together, neither of us willing to let go. I woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. Adrian was in my tiny kitchen, looking absurdly domestic as he navigated my ancient coffee maker. He'd rolled his shirt sleeves up, and I could see intricate markings on his forearms. Not tattoos exactly, but something older. Ritual scars, maybe. "Morning," he said, noticing me watching. "I hope you don't mind." I needed caffeine. "Help yourself." I patted over, accepting the mug he offered. "What time is it?" 8. "We have 4 hours before the council meeting." The reminder made my stomach clench. "I'm terrified." "Good, a little fear keeps you sharp." Adrian leaned against the counter. "But remember, you're not alone in that room. I'll be beside you every moment. What if I mess up? Say the wrong thing? Then we handle it together." He reached out, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind my ear. "Evelyn, they're expecting you to be weak, intimidated. If you show them even a fraction of the strength I've seen in you, you'll surprise them." I wanted to believe that, wanted to be the person he seemed to think I was. What should I wear? Practical concerns, easier to manage than existential ones. Adrian's smile was slight, something that makes you feel powerful. This is psychological warfare as much as political maneuvering. I settled on a simple black dress. Professional, elegant, nothing flashy but well cut enough to suggest I belonged in formal settings. Adrian watched me get ready with an intensity that made my skin warm, his eyes tracking every movement. "You're staring," I said. "I'm memorizing." "In case..." He didn't finish. "In case what?" "In case they try to take you from me." His voice was quiet, dangerous. And I need to remember exactly what I'm fighting for. The rawness in his admission made my throat tight. I crossed to him, stood on tiptoes, and kissed him slowly. "They won't take me," I whispered against his mouth. "I promise." "Don't make promises you can't control." "Then I'll just have to make sure I can control it." At 11:30, Marcus arrived to drive us. He was exactly what I'd imagined. Tall, dark-haired, with eyes that assessed everything and a bearing that suggested military training. He nodded politely when Adrian introduced us, but I caught the concern in his glance. "The council's already assembled," Marcus said as we drove. "Elena's been rallying support all morning." "Expected," Adrian replied. "Who's wavering?" "Gideon Thornwood seems uncertain. Catherine Moore is firmly in your corner. The others..." Marcus shrugged. "They'll follow whoever seems to have the winning hand." "Political chess with me as the contested piece?" "Wonderful." The council met in a building that looked like it had stood for centuries. All stone and stained glass, more cathedral than government office. Inside, our footsteps echoed on marble floors as Adrian guided me through corridors that smelled of age and power. "Ready?" he asked outside massive oak doors. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Adrian pushed open the doors and we entered the council chamber. It was circular, with 12 seats arranged in a semicircle facing a clear space in the center. Each seat was occupied by someone who radiated authority and danger in equal measure. Some looked human. Others had that same otherness I'd noticed in Adrian, eyes too bright, movements too fluid. Elena sat in the center seat, and her smile when she saw me was razor-sharp. "Your Majesty," she said, standing. "How good of you to join us, and you've brought your... human." The way she said human made it sound like an insult. Adrian's hand found the small of my back, steady and warm. "Council members, may I formally present Evelyn Clark, my mate." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Elena spoke, her voice carrying false sweetness. "Well then, let's begin, shall we?" The council chamber felt like a coliseum, and I was standing in the center ring waiting for lions. Adrian had explained that I would be questioned alone. Protocol demanded it, a test of whether I could stand without his protection. He'd argued against it vehemently, but tradition was tradition, and defying it would only weaken our position. So he stood to the side, close enough that I could feel his presence, but far enough that I faced the council's scrutiny alone. Elena rose first, her movements graceful and predatory. "Miss Clark, thank you for accepting our invitation." Invitation. As if I'd had a choice. "Of course," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I understand you have questions." "Many questions." Elena circled me slowly, and I forced myself not to turn, not to track her movements. Adrian had warned me, showing fear would be blood in the water. "Let's start with the obvious. Do you understand what you've involved yourself in?" "I'm beginning to. Beginning." She laughed, the sound cold. 2 days ago, you were blissfully ignorant of our existence. Now you claim to be the Alpha King's mate. Forgive our skepticism." A man to her left spoke, older, with silver hair and scars crossing his weathered face. Gideon Thornwood, I remembered. "The girl can't possibly comprehend our world. The politics, the dangers, the responsibilities. She's a child playing at being queen." "I'm 26, I said quietly. "Not a child. To us, you're an infant." This from a woman with auburn hair and eyes like chips of ice. "Our youngest council member is 73. You've barely lived." "And yet," a new voice interjected, warm, feminine, with an accent I couldn't place, "fate doesn't consult our preferences. If she's truly his mate, her age is irrelevant." I looked toward the speaker. She was beautiful in an ethereal way, with dark skin and silver streaks through her black hair. Catherine Moore, the one Marcus said was in Adrian's corner. Elena's expression tightened. "Catherine, you can't seriously support this." "I support the mate bond. It's older than any of our politics, any of our traditions." Catherine met my eyes and smiled slightly. "Though I am curious, Miss Clark, what do you believe you can offer our king? What makes you worthy of standing beside him?" It was the question Adrian had warned me about, the one I'd rehearsed answers for all night. But standing here, feeling the weight of 12 ancient beings' scrutiny, all my prepared responses felt hollow. So I told the truth instead. "Nothing," I said. Silence crashed through the chamber. Adrian tensed visibly, but I continued before anyone could interrupt. "I can't offer centuries of experience or supernatural strength. I don't have an impressive bloodline or political connections. By your standards, I'm nobody." I looked around the circle, meeting each council member's eyes in turn. "But I can offer him something he told me he's been missing for a very long time. I can see him. Not the Alpha King, not the title or the power, just Adrian. Just the man who's been standing alone in crowded rooms for 200 years. "Sentiment?" Gideon scoffed. "Love doesn't govern kingdoms." "No," I agreed, "but maybe it should inform them. I've spent exactly 2 days in your world, and I've already seen how much fear drives your decisions. Fear of change, fear of outsiders, fear of anything that disrupts the comfortable hierarchies you've built." "Careful, girl," Elena warned. "You're speaking to people who could what? Kill me?" I looked directly at her. "You made that threat yesterday. It didn't work then either. Yes, I'm human. Yes, I'm fragile compared to you. But I'm also not stupid enough to believe you'd actually harm the Alpha King's acknowledged mate without declaring war on him." Elena's eyes flashed amber. "You presume much. I observe. Adrian has power, but you need him more than he needs you. This council exists to advise, not command. And right now, you're realizing that no amount of political maneuvering will change his choice." I took a breath, steadying myself. "So you can hate me, distrust me, spend years trying to undermine me, or you can accept that I'm here, I'm staying, and your energy would be better spent figuring out how to work with that reality." The silence that followed felt different. Not hostile exactly, but reassessing. Catherine laughed, a genuine, delighted sound. "Oh, I like her." "You like everyone," another council member muttered, but there was amusement in his tone. Elena, however, looked furious. "This is absurd. She's been in our world for 48 hours, and she thinks she can lecture us on treating people with basic dignity?" I interrupted. "Yes, I do. Because that's not supernatural wisdom. That's just being decent. Enough." Gideon stood, his expression grave. The girl has courage, I'll grant her that. But courage alone won't protect her from our enemies, won't navigate the complexities of supernatural politics. Won't what? Adrian's voice cut through like a blade. He'd been silent until now, letting me stand alone, but something in Gideon's tone had triggered his intervention. Won't make her worthy of me? Is that what you're implying? Gideon met his gaze steadily. You're the Alpha King. Your mate should be the person fate chose for me. Adrian moved to my side, his hand finding mine. Evelyn is brave enough to walk into a room full of predators and tell them they're wrong. She's compassionate enough to see past power to the person beneath. She asked a stranger to kiss her because she needed one moment of dignity, and when that stranger turned out to be a king, she didn't run. She stayed. She chose this, knowing it would be difficult and dangerous. His fingers tightened around mine. So yes, Counsel. She's exactly what I need. The question is whether you're wise enough to recognize that. The challenge hung in the air. I felt the power dynamics shifting, ancient alliances being tested. Finally, Catherine spoke. I moved to formally recognize Evelyn Clark as the Alpha King's chosen mate, with all rights and protections that status entails. Seconded, said the man who'd found me amusing, a younger council member with kind eyes. This is premature, Elena protested. We haven't even discussed the implications for succession, for the implications are simple, Catherine said calmly. If they complete the mate bond, any children will be heirs to the throne. Hybrid or not. Hybrids are weak, Gideon interjected. They often can't shift, can't access the full range of our abilities. Or they develop entirely new abilities, Catherine countered. There are precedents. The Silver Moon line produced hybrids 2 centuries ago who could walk in daylight without discomfort, who had human cunning combined with wolf strength. Different doesn't mean inferior. The debate spiraled from there, arcane discussions of bloodlines and precedents, of historical examples I had no context for. I stood beside Adrian, overwhelmed by the complexity of it all, and tried not to let the fear show. After what felt like hours but was probably only 40 minutes, Elena called for a vote. All in favor of formally recognizing Evelyn Clark as the Alpha King's mate? 7 hands rose. Catherine, the kind-eyed man, and 5 others I hadn't heard speak. Opposed? 5 hands, including Elena's and Gideon's. The motion carries, Catherine announced, looking satisfied. Welcome to our world, Miss Clark. Officially. Relief and terror warred in my chest. I'd passed, barely, but the 5 opposing votes told me this was far from over. Elena stood, her expression carefully neutral now. Congratulations, Your Majesty. I hope your choice brings the stability you believe it will. The doubt in her voice was clear, but Adrian merely inclined his head. Thank you for your input, Counsel. We'll adjourn. He guided me out of the chamber with a hand at my back, Marcus falling into step behind us. I held myself together until we reached the car, and then my knees went weak. I couldn't find words. Terrifying, overwhelming, proof that you're stronger than you think. Adrian pulled me against him, and I felt him trembling too. You were magnificent. I insulted them. You stood your ground. There's a difference. He kissed the top of my head. 7-5. Better than I expected, honestly. 5 council members want me gone. 5 council members are now bound by the other's decision. Elena will push back, test boundaries, but she can't act overtly against you without violating council law. Marcus spoke from the driver's seat, his tone matter-of-fact. You've bought yourself time. What you do with it will determine everything. The next weeks blurred together in a crash course on supernatural politics and pack dynamics. Adrian was patient, thorough, introducing me to key allies and teaching me to navigate the complex social structures that governed his world. I met pack leaders from across the territories, attended formal dinners where every word carried weight, learned to recognize the subtle cues of dominance and deference. It was exhausting. More than once I wanted to quit, to retreat to my simple human life, where the biggest challenge was declining manuscripts tactfully. But then Adrian would find me, would pull me into his arms and remind me why I was fighting. You don't have to prove yourself to them. he said one evening after a particularly brutal dinner with the Thornwood family. We were back at his estate, in the library that had become our refuge. You only have to prove yourself to yourself. I don't know if I can do this, I admitted. Be what they need. What you need. You already are. Adrian's hand cupped my face, tilting it up so I met his eyes. Evelyn, you've survived 3 weeks in a world that terrifies you. You've made allies, earned respect from people who started out determined to hate you. Catherine told me yesterday that you're the most natural diplomat she's seen in decades. She's being kind. She doesn't do kind. She does honest. His thumb traced my lower lip. And I think it's time. My heart stuttered. Time? To complete the bond, if you're ready. Adrian's expression was vulnerable in a way I'd rarely seen. I can't protect you fully until the bond is sealed. Can't sense if you're in danger, can't be there instantly if you need me. And after Elena's latest maneuvering— What maneuvering? He sighed. She's been meeting with fringe pack leaders. Ones who resent my rule, who see you as a weakness to exploit. Marcus intercepted intelligence suggesting they're planning something. Fear spiked through me. Something like what? Nothing concrete yet, but I won't risk you. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me closer. The mate bond, once complete, makes you nearly as difficult to kill as I am. Our life forces become linked. Anyone wanting to harm you would have to go through me first. Literally. I thought about it, about tying my life to his so completely. About the intimacy it would require, the vulnerability. Yes, I whispered. Adrian's eyes darkened. You're sure? In answer, I kissed him. What followed was slow, reverent, nothing like the hurried passion I'd expected. Adrian took his time, his hands gentle despite their strength, murmuring words in languages I didn't know against my skin. When he finally marked me, teeth sinking into the curve of my neck and shoulder, the pain was brief, overwhelmed by a rush of sensation that felt like every nerve ending lighting up at once. The bond snapped into place like a key turning in a lock. Suddenly, I could feel him. Not just physically, but emotionally. His relief, his joy, his absolute certainty that I was his and he was mine. It was overwhelming and perfect and terrifying in its intensity. Evelyn, he breathed against my neck. Can you feel it? Yes. My voice shook. I feel everything. Welcome to forever, Adrian murmured, and held me while I cried, not from sadness, but from the sheer enormity of what we'd just done. The bond changed things. I healed faster, felt stronger, could sense Adrian's location and emotional state even when we were apart. It was like having a constant companion in my mind, a presence that both comforted and overwhelmed. The council noticed immediately. Catherine congratulated us with genuine warmth. Elena's fury was equally genuine, though she hid it behind political courtesy. But the real test came 3 months after the bond was sealed. I was leaving a meeting with one of the PAC schools. Adrian had asked me to evaluate their curriculum, to bring a human perspective to how young wolves were educated, when I felt it. A presence behind me, moving too fast, radiating hostility. Training kicked in. I spun, caught a glimpse of a man with wild eyes and extended claws, and threw myself sideways. Pain exploded across my ribs as those claws caught me anyway, tearing through fabric and flesh. But instead of fear, I felt rage. Not my rage, Adrian's, flooding through the bond, making my vision blur with amber light. The attacker hesitated, confused by my reaction, and that moment of confusion saved me. Marcus appeared from nowhere, tackling the man with brutal efficiency. Other guards converged, and within seconds the threat was contained. I pressed my hand to my bleeding side, breathing through the pain, and felt Adrian's presence slam into my awareness. He was coming, moving faster than should be possible, the bond between us screaming his panic and fury. He burst through the door 3 minutes later, and his expression when he saw me made my heart clench. Terror. Relief, murderous intent toward my attacker. I'm okay, I said quickly. Marcus got him. Adrian was beside me instantly, his hands hovering over my wound, afraid to touch. You're bleeding. It's not deep. Already healing, I think. And it was. I could feel flesh knitting back together, the bond accelerating my recovery. Who was he? Adrian's voice was deadly calm, his eyes fixed on the man Marcus held restrained. James Redwood, Marcus replied. Elena's younger cousin. He's been on our watch list for anti-human rhetoric. Elena's cousin. Adrian stood slowly, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Interesting. Over the next hours, the truth emerged. James had acted alone, driven by fanatical belief that humans would destroy wolf society. But he'd been influenced by Elena's public comments about my unsuitability, had taken her political opposition as permission for violence. The council was forced to convene again. Elena sat in her usual seat, her expression carefully neutral, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. This had been her mistake, not ordering the attack perhaps, but creating the environment where someone felt justified in making it. The law is clear, Catherine said coldly. Attacking the Alpha King's mate is an act of treason. James Redwood will be executed. Additionally, Adrian spoke for the first time, his voice carrying a weight that made even Elena shift uncomfortably. Any council member whose rhetoric contributed to this attack will be formally censured. Elena's eyes flashed. You can't possibly suggest Your cousin cited your speeches in his confession, your words about human weakness, about the contamination of bloodlines. Adrian's gaze could have cut stone. I'm not suggesting you ordered this, but I am holding you accountable for creating the conditions that made it possible. This is absurd. This is justice. Catherine's support was immediate. I second the censure. The vote was 10-2 this time. Only Elena and one loyal ally opposed. Adrian stood. Elena Grayson, you are hereby removed from senior council position. You'll retain your seat, but your voting power is suspended for 1 year. In that time, you'll consider whether your loyalty is to tradition or to this kingdom's future. Elena's face was a mask of fury, but she bowed her head. As you command, Your Majesty. We left the chamber together, Adrian's arm around my waist, his hand resting protectively over the bandaged wound on my ribs. This won't end it, I said quietly. She'll still oppose us, probably, but she'll do it more carefully now. Adrian stopped, turning to face me fully. And you proved something today. You didn't freeze, didn't break. You fought back. I got lucky. You got strong. His hand cupped my face. The woman I met 4 months ago would have been terrified. You were angry. He was right. I had been angry, furious that someone thought they could hurt me and not face consequences, that my existence was seen as something worth killing over. I'm tired of being underestimated, I admitted, then stop letting them. Adrian smiled. Be what I know you are, what you showed me that first night, brave enough to demand what you need, strong enough to stand beside a king. Over the following months, I did exactly that. I threw myself into learning pack law, understanding territory disputes, building relationships with key allies. Catherine became a mentor, teaching me the intricate dance of supernatural politics. Even some of the council members who'd opposed me initially began to grudgingly respect my determination. And through it all, Adrian was beside me, patient, protective, proud. We were in the library one evening, 6 months after the attack, when he handed me a small box. What's this? Open it. Inside was a ring, white gold set with a stone I didn't recognize, milky and luminous like captured moonlight. It's moonstone, Adrian explained. In my culture, we exchange these when a mate bond is formalized publicly. It's not necessary. The bond itself is the commitment. But I wanted you to have something visible, something that shows the world you're mine, and I'm yours. My throat tightened. It's beautiful. So are you. He took the ring and slid it onto my finger. Evelyn Clark, you've survived council interrogations, assassination attempts, and Elena's passive-aggressive dinner parties. You've made me laugh, made me hope, made me believe that maybe fate knew what it was doing after all. Is this a proposal? This is a promise, that whatever comes, however hard it gets, we face it together. His hand covered mine, the ring warm between our palms. You're my mate, my queen, my choice. Forever. I kissed him then, tasting salt. His tears are mine, I wasn't sure. Maybe both. Forever, I whispered against his mouth, though that's a really long time for you. Not long enough, Adrian corrected and pulled me closer. 2 years later, I stood in the council chamber again, but this time, I wasn't being questioned. I was presenting policy recommendations, suggesting reforms to how human-wolf interactions were managed. The room listened with respect, even Elena, though her expression remained sour. After the session, Catherine pulled me aside. "You've come a long way from the terrified girl who insulted us all." "I was never terrified," I lied. She laughed. "You absolutely were, but you hid it well. That's what matters. Not the fear, but how you handle it." I thought about that as Adrian and I drove home that evening, his hand resting on my knee, the bond between us humming with contentment. I'd asked a stranger to kiss me at a party, desperate for a moment of visibility. Instead, I'd found a king. A world I didn't know existed, and a strength I never knew I had. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It was dangerous, complicated, filled with enemies who'd love to see me fail. But as Adrian pulled me close in the safety of our home, his arms around me and his heartbeat steady against my back, I couldn't imagine choosing differently. "No regrets?" he murmured into my hair. I thought about everything. The fear, the challenges, the moments I'd wanted to run. Then I thought about belonging, about being seen, about finding the person who made even forever feel too short. "Not even one," I whispered. And as Adrian's lips found mine, the bond singing between us, I meant it. This strange, impossible life, this dangerous world of shadows and secrets, had given me something I'd searched for all my human years, a place to belong, a love worth fighting for, and the courage to become who I was always meant to be.